Crispin Porter Bogusky, who has recently gone through a bit of a consolidation on their end, absorbing storage shops like Vitro down here in San Diego, MMI, and Observatory, which is the branded entertainment agency that was spun out of CAA Marketing. So Brendan, quite a job in front of you, but an exciting one, I can imagine.
Very exciting. It's always been an exciting job, and it's really exciting to kind of bring 4 different agencies together, all with very good histories and really kind of complementary services to really reimagine, to your point, a storied agency that we now get to say, you know what, let's revive this amazing agency. Let's bring it back to its heyday and really the amazing work that kind of Crispin is known for, and kind of had lost a little bit of luster. But now we get to say, you know what, we get to reimagine this. And it's a daunting but really fun task, and one that I think all of us are super excited to take on.
Awesome. I love it. Well, we'll get into that, but I feel like we need to start with your background. It's fun looking at your resume because if you look at it, you would think, oh, wow, this guy has done a lot of amazing things, but you've really been with CAA Marketing since the beginning, and every iteration of your career since then has been either CAA Marketing being rebranded or spun out as a new venture, eventually acquired by Stagwell, and now in your current iteration. So do you want to walk us through some of your background? And I love that in a lot of your bio information, you tag your entertainment MBA as coming up through the trainee program at CAA, which I'm also an alumni of at ICM. So love to just jump into your background a little bit and get the viewers up to speed on where you've been as you've climbed the ladder to this new role as Chief Innovation Officer.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely have spent most of my career in the entertainment, advertising, marketing world. I went to college for theater stage management, so live theater. Wow. And kind of halfway through college, I said, I don't know if I want to make a career out of this. It's been really fun. The adrenaline that you get from putting on live performances is amazing. But as I kind of sat there and said, hey, where do I want my career to go? I said, I'm not sure it's in the live theatrical entertainment. And so talked to a lot of advisors and folks as I was getting towards the end of college. And a lot of people said, you know what, go to an entertainment agency, go work as an assistant there. You'll just get so much great knowledge and see the entertainment world, and you can kind of figure out where you want to go. So I did that. I actually went to William Morris Agency, pre-WME, back in the olden days, before Ari Emanuel. Left there, went to a small talent management and production company. And I really said to myself, I was yearning for something that was a nice hybrid between entertainment, but had a little bit more business acumen or marketing to it as well. And so an opportunity came up at CAA Marketing. And at the time I said, what's CAA Marketing? And so did a little research and went in for some interviews and said, wow, this could be amazing. And that really started this whole journey of trying to kind of blur the lines between advertising, brand world, and the entertainment world. And I think that, look, I started there as an assistant many years ago, worked my way up through the trainee program, the mailroom trainee program, as you talked about, which really gets you this amazing understanding of how the talent agency world works, how the entertainment world works. And it was great for me because I also got to educate a lot of my colleagues who I was in the mailroom with about what CAA Marketing did, because it was very different than the traditional talent agency world. And then to your point, CAA Marketing spun out of CAA, was acquired by Stagwell about 6 years ago, I think at this point, became Observatory. I've held numerous different positions at Observatory. And then about 8 months ago, we combined with 3 other agencies. We're now part of Crispin and taken on this new role as Chief Innovation Officer at Crispin. So that's kind of my 15-year history at this point, and really excited for what the next 13 and 15 looks like.
I love it. So what was the main reason for CAA kind of spinning Observatory out and selling it to Stagwell? Was the idea that it just allowed you guys to operate outside of just CAA clients and being pigeonholed in as a CAA relationship and allowed you the full breadth of all entertainment partnerships to work with? What was the main idea for that spinoff?
Yeah, it's a great question. We actually, interestingly, we always, as CAA Marketing, could work outside of the halls of the Death Star there at CAA, because our brand clients were paying us for our expertise in the entertainment space. And so we always sat there and said, listen, who's going to be the right person, from the talent partner, from the writer partner, producer partner, et cetera. But really the reason was because our brand clients were asked, they wanted more and more from us as an agency. They wanted us to serve as an AOR for them. They wanted us to do more producing for them. They wanted us to create more advertising and have that full suite of services. And just within the halls of CAA, and because of some of the guild restrictions at the time, we couldn't produce. We couldn't do a lot of the things that our clients were asking for us. And so we sat there and said, listen, we need a new home where we can do this, where we can still bring the values and the ethos of what we have at CAA Marketing, but allows us to kind of work across more different deliverables and give our clients what they wanted at the time. And so that was the reason that we shifted out of CAA. We still obviously had relationships there. As you know, when you're in the entertainment industry, people are everywhere. The person you worked with this month is at another place. And so it was the right time and the right move for us to be able to expand and grow our business.
Yeah, no, I love that. So let's talk a little bit about your new role as Chief Innovation Officer of CPB. So you've got an interesting consolidation within a holding company already that has some of the largest creative agencies, 72andSunny and other storied creative agencies. CPB, legacy creative agency with kind of famous founders that were very personality driven. You've got Vitro down in San Diego, led by John Vitro for many years, great accounts like Guinness and others. You've got MMI, which is a Houston-based influencer agency and media shop. And then you've got Observatory, which is probably one of the most well-known branded entertainment agencies in the world. Many Cannes Lions and huge wins on projects like the Chipotle, Coldplay animations, and launching Waffle Iron Studios with Nike. Can you talk a little bit about that makeup of what each kind of brings to the table and what you guys are looking to accomplish through this consolidation? And also, if you could touch on why CPB as the brand that remains intact.
Sure. Well, you touched on it really nicely. You've clearly done your research about the various different agencies that came together. But the reason that we've done it is because all of those different things that you mentioned that each of the different legacy agencies are known for are incredibly complementary. And so similar to when we were talking about spinning out of CAA, when you look at that, all of those companies combined together offer really a powerhouse, amazing offering. So as Observatory, we didn't have an influencer and creator team. The legacy of MMI team, they had really one of the best in class creator and influencer teams, also had the media buying and strategy chops. And so for us, the ability to bring that together with the amazing creative and branded entertainment that Observatory was known for was perfect. And again, same with Vitro and my colleagues in San Diego now, amazing kind of best in class, agile creative campaigns, really for disruptors and challengers. And honestly, like as Legacy Observatory, we probably weren't the most agile people in the world. It takes like 12 months to make a stop animation project for Chipotle. And so when you look at it, all of those services were so complementary and allowed us to come together and say, you know what, we can now service our current clients better than we've ever serviced them before because we have more options for them. We can go after bigger clients that frankly are just looking for bigger teams that have the bandwidth and the capabilities to do what they want. But the best part about this is that it's not like we're sitting here saying, oh, you have to now buy all of these things from Crispin. We're very much sitting there saying, if you want to use us just for branded entertainment, great. If you want to use us just for our influencer and creator marketing team, absolutely, no problem. But we also have all these big complementary services that we can offer to our clients now, whether legacy clients from before the merger or new clients as we go out there and talk to new clients. And then,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, you've talked before about how, at Observatory, the ideas that you guys pitch are generally the ones that are at the end of a pitch deck, the big kind of scary, audacious idea. But now you guys can put the full services of influencer marketing, media planning, traditional ad creative, whether that's TV or digital, but then also those branded entertainment ideas that Observatory is so famous for, and really probably a consolidated plan of how those big ideas can kind of back out into a larger, cohesive traditional strategy, I guess, if that makes sense. But maybe being able to translate it into more channels potentially.
100%, and I think we're seeing these days that campaigns, they need to be holistic in nature. And so if you have an influencer or creator element to a campaign, that needs to be linked back to the core idea. And sometimes we might sit there and say, you know what, for the purposes of this campaign, we actually should lean more on creator or influencer marketing as opposed to a paid media plan. Or for some other campaign, we might sit there and say, we need to lean into paid media because of XYZ. And so now we have a group that can sit there and objectively sit there and say, this is the right thing for the campaign. We can handle that through the various different capabilities that we've got here. And so we're doing what's right for our clients as opposed to what's right for us because we happen to be the media buying agency or whatnot.
Yeah, that's cool. So when you think of innovation roles, a lot of times you're thinking of, kind of that thought leadership within the agency that is really thinking about, what's coming next in the tech space and how that's either disrupting current business models. How can you take opportunities to capitalize on those things? Last year it was probably metaverse. The year before it was probably NFTs. A lot of Web3.
Sure.
And this year, I would imagine, you're probably spending a lot of time thinking about AI. But could you maybe talk about some of the big things on the innovation space that is occupying a lot of your headspace?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really viewing innovation in kind of 3 or 4 different ways right now. So as I look at my role, the first one is really innovating how we service our clients. How are we structuring our teams to make sure that they are best structured for whatever the client needs? And so obviously I'm doing that in partnership with our head of client services, our head of creative, our other teams. But I get to in some ways come in and be the provocative one and sit there and say, this is really what I think our client is asking for. So let's figure out, how do we structure the team in the right way to do that, as opposed to just relying on, this is how we structure a team, this is what the legacy is here. And then I think the second way I'm looking at innovation is partnering with all of our clients to sit there and say, what does innovation look like for you in terms of your marketing mix? Because you might have a very traditional client that doesn't market through social media, doesn't really think about how are we expanding into a more digital first world. And so for them, innovation might be, hey, let's go do something with Discord. Let's go do something with Reddit or whatever that might be. For other clients, it might be, hey, we need to go and do branded entertainment. We need to go and do real entertainment. And so for me, I get to sit there across the breadth of everything that we offer and everything that might be new in the world and say, for you, client Z, this is the right way that you should be innovating. And here's how we as a company can support that. And so let us show you what our solutions are to your business problem, as opposed to them coming and saying, I need a 30-second television commercial.
Yeah.
Third is exactly what you said. It's innovation in terms of technology. So it's in terms of technology that we're using as a company to service our clients, but also in terms of technology that we might be integrating into our campaigns. And so, for instance, many years ago, we did a VR campaign for a client. And arguably, it might have been a little bit early in the VR world to actually be doing that 8 years ago. But
Wow, 8 years ago.
exactly. but that's the type of thing that we're doing now. And so I think that integrating it into and saying, listen, should we be doing something in the metaverse for you? Should we be doing something with AI for you, for a client? And then obviously looking at our company and kind of putting together what's our plan for how we are going to use AI within our work or not in some instances, and partnering with the various folks across the agency to figure out how to do that. And also recognizing that I think the world and technology is changing so much faster than it ever has before. And so it's not going to be a hard and fast rule of how we do things. It's going to be very much something that we're going to have to evaluate on a monthly basis to say, here's this new technology. How does that work within our overall offering? Because again, things are changing, which is great. It's also daunting for sure. And then look, I think the last element of my role is taking that legacy of what I have from the branded entertainment side of things and really iterating upon that and saying, what is our vision for what branded entertainment looks like in the future, and how can we evolve that? Because I think we're seeing in the world right now, brands and entertainment, that line is starting to get blurred so much more right now. And I personally think that consumers care less about where entertainment and content is coming from and who's funding it. And they're more interested in what is bringing me joy in my world, what is entertaining me. And I also think that branded entertainment these days, whereas maybe 5 to 10 years ago, a lot of brands just treated it like a long ad. I think brands are saying now consumers are getting that we can't just serve them a 2-minute advertisement. We need to actually make something that people are seeking out and engaging with. And so for me, I get to sit there and say, well, how do we continue to innovate? How do we stay at the forefront of what branded entertainment is? So it's a very long answer to your relative.
Wow, I love it. I love it. You mentioned, I think you tagged on something that's really important as brands start to realize that it's going to be harder and harder to interrupt their consumers in traditional places like display ads or pre-roll or television or really anywhere. If people are subscribing to VOD services, I mean, advertising is inescapable, but people are getting smarter and smarter and finding ways that they can avoid it. And, branded entertainment is a great way to get in front of them. You think about projects in recent times like, I forget the name of it, but the Formula One content that came out on Netflix. Yeah. I mean, that had such an impact that it felt like it really paved the way for Formula One to come into the United States market. And it was really seen as something that people wanted to see. It wasn't seen as something that was interruptive. In Clio, you talked about an idea that you have to have idea flow before you can have deal flow. Like you have to start with a great idea, and you can't just buy your way into celebrities. Some celebrities you can, but ultimately you got to have a great idea first if you're going to attract the right team to a project. So can you talk about kind of that concept of idea flow versus deal flow?
Sure. I think for us, we come from the world in the entertainment world where you think about kind of traditional packaging from a television side of things. You're trying to get all the different elements, the talent, the actor, the director, the producer, the writer. You're trying to get everyone excited about what the project is and kind of working together, as opposed to just sitting there and saying, here's the project, here's a paycheck. That's fine. You can do that. But from a brand standpoint, I believe that it's more important to get all of your partners, whether that's the talent, the celebrity talent, whether that's your writer, whether that's your production company partner. I think it's more important to get them excited about the project and to actually iterate with them, as opposed to just coming in and saying, what's it going to cost to do this? Because if you approach it with just the what's it going to cost, it just becomes purely transactional. No one really has feels like they have ownership in it. They just show up when they're supposed to show up. They do whatever's written in the contract, and they're not going to sit there and be like, oh my gosh, like my name's attached to this. I think we should do it this way. And so that's even in the way that we have traditionally operated as an agency. We always want to collaborate with whomever our partners is, whether that's the director, the writer, the production company, the celebrity talent. Like I was on set a couple weeks ago, and I can't talk about the project yet, but have me back in a couple months and I'll talk about it.
Nice.
But I was on set a couple weeks ago with a celebrity talent, and she looked at us and she said, you know what, guys, I have this idea for this scene that could be really cool. Could we try it? And we absolutely said yes. Like, she was a comedian. If she thought it was going to be fun, she understood it. Let's give it a try. And if it doesn't work, that's fine. We've wasted 6 megabytes of digital space. Not a big deal in this day and age. But that's the type of person that we want to work with. And it's because we engaged her as a partner in ours in crafting what this could look like, not here's the script, go on stage and read this script.
Yeah, that's cool. And I've also heard another way that a lot of interesting branded entertainment opportunities get sold in is that maybe a celebrity has an idea around like either a product or some type of content that they're really passionate about, but it hasn't, for whatever reason, resonated in the traditional pitching process of pitching it to studios or networks or kind of traditional gatekeepers who greenlit projects. Can you talk about how sometimes you can tap into celebrities' own passion points to find common ground with a brand and their values, and how that can sometimes birth interesting projects?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a great way to engage with celebrity because they're already passionate about your brand or the space or the cause or whatever it might be. And so they're coming in and saying, this is something that I'm passionate about. And for them, they're sitting there saying, wow, like maybe this brand can help me bring my desire, my thing to the world, which is fantastic. That's one of the easiest ways to get in there. And if a brand is coming and saying, you know what, I can enable you to do that, I can help you do that. And so I think from a brand standpoint, there is a bit of a misnomer out there. Like, brands don't have $10 million sitting around to just green light a film or green light a television series. Like, it's not really a thing these days, unfortunately. But there are other ways, especially when you look at an entertainment space of, hey, can this brand help create a proof of concept? Maybe that proof of concept actually costs $100,000 something to make. And you can then take that proof of concept and bring that into the studios. Because sometimes as a studio or network executive, you get a pitch, you see a deck, you've seen something, but you don't totally get it. You don't get the feel, you don't get the tone of what that is. But then when you actually see the 90-second proof of concept or 5-minute proof of concept, you're like, I get that. And that's an interesting way for a brand to be involved, to say, listen, I funded this early on, so now I'm, as a brand, an executive producer on this. Maybe the brand has media that they can buy media against this or do a promotional campaign against this. But it gives then, for the brand, assuming something gets greenlit, the brand can then authentically go out there in the world and say, I was a part of bringing this amazing thing to life. That brand can show up at a film festival if something gets into a film festival. That brand can authentically show up at a premiere and saying, we helped make this happen. The celebrity talent is super happy because their project has been made. And so there's a lot of different ways that can come about. And it doesn't necessarily need to be an advertisement. It could be. It could be some other partnership that you're doing with the talent. The talent might show up to an event or something like that. So there's a lot of different ways to structure deals. And I think that's the other thing that the entertainment industry has taught us really well, in that no deal is the same. Every deal can be structured differently. It's all about what's right for the project, what's right for the celebrity talent, the producer, the writer, et cetera. at that point in their career.
Yeah, that's awesome. And theoretically, the brand could still get some social media assets or maybe some type of a campaign out of that process, right? Of creating, becoming part of that development process of, funding a proof of concept. They're still getting something out of it. It's not just like they're, developing a pilot and crossing their fingers that it's not an all or nothing type of a situation. They still get value along the way.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think thank you for mentioning that, because I think for me, that's just table stakes of, yes, the brand has to get something out of this. Like brands aren't just there to go spend money creating cool things. So you're absolutely right. That's just a matter of, as a brand, we need to sit there and say, what's going to be relevant to us? What's something that we want, and how do we do that? And it also doesn't mean that the brand can't, if the project gets greenlit, it doesn't mean that the brand can't be still involved with the project, can't have some product placement or some of their values come through in it. So yes, there's so much that they can still get out of this. And that is really an important element of anytime we do any deal or go on to any project, we're always making sure that it's not an all or nothing, because we can't just spend $100,000 and get nothing back.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right.
Awesome. So on that note, can you walk us maybe through an example of the economics behind something that you would consider a successful project in the branded entertainment space? You don't have to obviously get down to the line item or anything that's proprietary that you couldn't share. But I think it's fascinating that a lot of brands aren't aware that they can go through this entire process of launching a branded entertainment project and then come to the end of their life cycle with that project, get PR, social media, experiential, all of this value along the way. And then there is the potential on the back end to actually recoup their marketing investment back and actually make money. So can you maybe walk us through an example of something like that has been successful and kind of how that process worked?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think I do want to make the distinction of, like, there's let's call it heavily branded entertainment, which is something that might have some product placement in it, something that's probably being funded fully by a brand, and they're viewing it as part of their advertising, part of their marketing mix. And the idea from that is that they're going to get cut downs, they're going to get social media, they're going to be putting a media buy behind it. And so it's acting a bit like their advertising. In that scenario, your return on that is you're treating that like you would measure advertising.
Intention, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So you can, whatever you want to view that on, views, impressions, etc., sales, etc. So that is kind of the more heavily branded entertainment side of things, which is valid and is one way. And that's probably a way that you can tell a bit more of the brand story or a product story and get your brand's messaging out there a bit more. From the entertainment side of things, let's call it more pure entertainment. Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the ways that we often talk with some of our clients on that side of things is, let's come in and spend some development funds or spend just a little bit of money to bring you on as an executive producer here. And oftentimes, let's take a documentary, for instance. Maybe there's a documentary where the documentarian is like, this thing is happening right now. All of sports has been shut down because of COVID. We don't know where this is going to go, but we need to get cameras out there filming this right now. And so what is it going to take? Just bare minimum for me to just get cameras out there to start capturing some content while we figure out, okay, what are we going to go pitch out there? And so as a brand, you sit there and say, you know what? If we're a sports brand, let's go capture this content, and then we'll figure it out because this is happening in real time. Or you've got, let's say, an athlete that they're having a breakout year, and you're like, we want to go capture something so that we have this in the bag. As a brand, you're then an executive producer. You hopefully capture this content, create an amazing sizzle, create an amazing deck that then you're going to pitch to distributors. And as one who's funded some of this, you're then part of the waterfall, which is basically when the distributor pays for this, probably going to recoup by the production company first, and then the other financiers get back too. Again, every deal is different. And so as a brand, say something goes and gets made, you then can advertise potentially around that. You can post on your social channels. You can maybe use some of your owned and operated channels to advertise around this. So you get those elements that we were talking about earlier, the advertising like assets, the promotion like assets. But you also say whatever it is, Netflix or Hulu or someone has bought this. If they've bought this for a premium more than it costs to actually create this, you are then part of the ones that you've recouped your money and possibly made money on this. And interestingly, about 5 or 6 years ago, one of my former clients, we were working on this model. And I remember the client looking at me saying, Brendan, my biggest problem right now is my finance team doesn't know how in the marketing budget to accept money back in the organization because we're only built to spend money on marketing. We're not built to actually get it back in the organization.
Wow.
And so that's something that with our clients that have been doing this, that actually has been a real thing to sit there and say, well, what does that look like? And how do we deal with this from a finance standpoint? Because this is not normal. Marketing budgets aren't used to getting money back in because marketing obviously is meant to drive sales.
Yeah, it's kind of like the days of Red Bull Media, right? Where they're now generating so much revenue from, say, YouTube ads and licensing fees and different things like that they're actually spending less money on media every year because they have all these owned assets out there working for them. But yeah, I mean, that really feels like the holy grail to me, and what every advertiser, no matter the size, should aspire to, is creating content that is potentially added value and meant to entertain or educate your audience and not interrupt them, but then actually receiving a return on investment on your marketing dollars and having those dollars work for you outside of the media value, the PR value, the social media value, and just the brand equity value of aligning with causes and passions and things that your audience cares about, not just trying to talk to them about products.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's plenty of studies out there that really talk about, consumers want to be engaged with brands that they share their values with. And so I think that at the moment, we're seeing more and more consumers saying, I want to go deep on what this brand actually values. And it's important to me that this brand shares values that I do. And so through entertainment, that's absolutely something that we can show, especially when you think about the documentary side of things or what types of stories we're trying to tell. Sometimes as a brand, it's like if you're funding that type of a story, people are like, I understand why this brand is funding this. It's because it's rooted in their values. And I appreciate that as a consumer.
Yeah, I love that. So, I think we've talked a little bit about it today, but really, the idea right now is consumers are fatigued with advertising. They don't love it. They especially don't love it when it's presented to them in a way in which they don't have any kind of agency or choice on whether they were going to be exposed to it or if they have to watch it. So, advertising that is at least skippable, or you can kind of exit out. I think people are a little bit more willing to, they understand that if they're getting good content on YouTube or if they're visiting a website that's informing them, they'll at least, give you a moment of their attention. But how do you see advertisers creating content that actually captures attention versus interrupts people's attention in the current paradigm?
Yeah, I think that, and I didn't answer one of your questions earlier about kind of the why Crispin name.
Yeah.
And so let me answer that because I think that's relevant to what we're talking about here. I think Crispin in its heyday they were creating content that consumers wanted to watch, whether that was a 30-second ad, whether that was some amazing stunt that was happening, they set out with that idea of like, what's going to capture attention? What's going to get that PR headline? Like, what is the thing that's different? And so for us, one of the reasons that we picked to stay with that Crispin heritage is that they were so good at that back in the heyday, so good at saying, what's the thing that's going to capture consumers' attention and make the consumer sit there and say, what was that? Like, I want to go back and figure that out. That was super cool. I'm going to probably at the time, I'm going to call my friend, or I'm going to like AOL instant messenger them or something like that, you know? But I think that kind of back to your question, like for us now, it's about sitting there saying, like, what do consumers actually want to see and what's going to be different for them? And so for us, we had to sit there and say, well, what are the new technologies? What's the new story? What's the new way that we're engaging them? And I'm a firm believer that there are mediums through which it absolutely makes sense to talk about product benefits and talk about what the price is and what phone number to call to reach the person that's going to tell you about what you can get, et cetera. But I think that we have to think about, especially when you think about video advertising these days, because that's probably the most skipped thing. You know, I see a 30-second ad that shows up on my screen and it's like, I'm picking up my phone and I work in the advertising industry. Like that's concerning. But for me, that's where I'm like, I want to see something on screen that's entertaining to me or engaging to me in some way, shape, or form. And so I think that there is a world in which you can be engaging to consumers while you're talking about product benefits. But I think it's more about that entertainment, that moment to sit there and it's something that looks different. And so you've captured the attention of your consumer. And this can be done again through video, through experiential, through social, all those things. And then let's drive the consumer to come and research us. So let's capture their attention through video, and then you can drive them to the website. You can drive them to the social media handle. You can drive them to come do their research. And I think a lot of consumers are much savvier these days about doing their research. Because again, you think about it, in the olden days, we didn't have Google to go to. You didn't have, you know, a whole bunch of different online platforms for reviews and to sit there and tell you about this brand. So as a brand, you're sitting there saying, well, I have to tell them about the product benefits. I have to tell them about the reviews. I have to tell all of this stuff because there's no other way that consumers are going to figure that out unless it's they walk into a store and talk to a salesperson or something. Now the consumers can do all that work themselves. So it's our job as a brand to really attract and engage audiences through interesting content or relevant content. And then they can go and do their research. They can go talk to their local retailer. But then they're going to go in and say, I want to understand about this car, or I want to understand about this. So I just think for us now, it's shifting the way in which we talk more about that values and what the brand stands for, and less about needing to get all of the immediate product benefits into something, because that's what's turning people off these days. People are like, I don't need you to tell me what size wheel you have on the car. I don't need you to tell me all of these different things. Like, I need to know who you are, what you stand for, and then I'll go do my other stuff out there.
Yeah, trust the consumer that they can figure out the product benefits. I love that idea. So I think you touched on another important point with just the heritage of CPB. I'm old enough in the industry where I called on CPB when it was out in Boulder. And I remember hearing stories from colleagues who worked there where, you know, they would recruit creatives and agency talent from New York or Chicago and LA. And it was not uncommon for the town car to be, you know, turned around as they're driving through the cornfields of Colorado on the way to Boulder. But if you could survive the drive out there, a lot of people just fell in love with the culture so much. I remember going in there and there was a I believe it was a Domino's payphone where you could pick it up at any time, and it was a bat line directly into the local Domino's franchise, in the neighborhood in Boulder, where they would deliver a pizza, anytime you picked up this phone. And they had a guy who worked there that was called like the Sherpa, and he would like install the bike rack on your car for your mountain bike. And they were like early to having like the cool office with meditation rooms before it was like a trope at every, creative agency. But, it was like this giant warehouse with all these, plywood paneled rooms and stuff. It's just one of the funkiest places I've ever, I definitely miss having to call on them and going and seeing that agency. But knowing that you guys have that storied history and kind of that, and then a lot of that with Observatory and Vitro as well. How do you plan on continuing to build that culture of creativity so you guys can win the best creative minds to come over and do work with you guys?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that the creativity is at the core of everything that we're trying to do right now. And so I think that when we think about all of the different complementary services that we have, it's all to really inform and to elevate that creative work that we're doing in the world. I think the key, though, the difference now is that creativity can come to life in so many different ways. And so I've talked a little bit about our influencer and creator team. Like, just because we as an agency aren't sitting there with writers and art directors and a creative director creating the content that's out there, like, our influencers and creators, they're working on behalf of the brand to do that too. And so there's so many different ways that creativity comes to life these days that it's important that we sit there and say, what's the right creativity for the client, for the brand that we're trying to get out there? And what's the right way for us to tell the story and to solve the business problem? And so that is, the creativity is at the core of everything we do. Certainly my job as the innovation lead is to inject so many more ideas, so many more new, whether it's technologies, whether it's new information, whether it's new ways of marketing into that world, to sit there and get our creative juices flowing, if you will. And so I think that, we always are talking to new partners, whether that's a media platform, whether that's an influencer and creator network, whether that is a branded entertainment group that started a new arm that's going to go do animation. We're always taking those meetings to see what's new out there. I'd say, I think also we have what's called the Crispin Culture Report that we put out every 2 weeks. And it's, for us, it's the stuff that's interesting to us in the world. What has this brand done that is super interesting? And we can sit there and say, objectively, you know what, that agency that isn't Crispin did something super cool. And what does that look like for our brands? Or what's the next iteration of something there? And so we're always sitting there looking at the world, what's happening, and we're sharing that with ourselves. We've got chats internally. We have just a channel that's show and tell, and it's the entire company. And it's very much like, hey, drop something in here that's cool. What inspired you this morning? What podcast did you listen to today? What film did you happen to see this afternoon? I just got off a meeting with the Los Angeles-based account team here. It happens every Monday. And they start the meeting by saying, what did you do this weekend? What are the cool things around town that I need to know about? Did you go see an art exhibit? Did you go see a film? Did you see a play? Whatever it might be. And the idea of that is very much to just have everyone share what creatively keeps them going. And I do remember that during COVID, one of the biggest struggles that I think all of us had was we weren't getting that injected creativity in our lives. We couldn't go to an art gallery. We couldn't go to a music festival. We didn't have those things that just kind of infused that entertainment into our lives. And so I think that for us as professional creatives, we need all of those different things, and we're always curious. And so we're always saying to people, hey, what do you want to tell me about? Like, I love it when our social team, they're like, hey, here's the new meme that you need to know about. Here's the new trend on TikTok that you should know about. For me, I'm a millennial. I also love it when teams are like, here's the new thing that Gen Z is doing that you need to know about. Sometimes I'm like, what does this word mean? What does this acronym mean? Please help. But I love it when people are telling me that too, because it just makes me smarter in my career and makes me better able to think about how is the work that I'm doing relevant to all of the different audiences that we might be talking to.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think if you think about a holding company environment, Stagwell tends to be more heavy on the creative, right? They're not known as a media shop roll up or a large conglomeration of media agencies. They're more known as a large conglomeration of some of the biggest and best creative agencies out there, whether it's 72 and Sunny, or also I know Stagwell just acquired Movers and Shakers, which is a kind of born in TikTok creative agency that's been behind some really big successful viral video launches around Elf Cosmetics and has done some really cutting edge work. So feels like the culture, holding company on down is very creatively driven.
Absolutely. And I would add that it's also very digitally driven, a lot of digitally native companies. And so when you think about always being at the forefront of culture, that digital background that we also have within Stagwell allows us to do that. And so you've got digital agencies that are helping to say, hey, here's the new technology. Stagwell has a great group of folks working on AI right now, building our own AI platforms that we can use, which I think is super important. And we were on that immediately when AI started to break, perhaps even before it a little bit, because we knew it was coming because of the digital world in which Stagwell also lives. And so it really is that, in my opinion, an amazing meld of the creativity and digital world, so that because we're all living in a digital world right now. And so like it just makes sense. You've got the amazing powerhouse creative that's also supported by the digital.
Nice. So you talked a little bit about my world, which is the influencer marketing and creator economy. What is your take on the creator economy, how brands should be partnering with influencers? All we know is that it's for sure growing, and it's becoming, I think now, almost half of the digital spend for many companies. So how are you planning on approaching the creator economy and your role with CPB? How are you guys going to do it differently than maybe some of your contemporaries?
Yeah. So I think that for us, there's a lot of different ways to look at this. And so I'm just going to say a few things that may or may not be relevant, but let's just go with it because we're doing today. So first and foremost, for us, we have all of the digital, the data, the research, the connectivity to access any influencer and creator out there. But it's very important for us to make sure that anytime we're doing that, we're not just sitting here saying, here's a person with 100,000 followers, pay them for whatever it is. We want to work with the folks that want to work with us as an agency and also with a brand, and ideally someone that has relevant interests, et cetera. And so this goes back to the idea that if there's a celeb that has a passion about something with a brand, like let's partner with that person. So the same is true from an influencer or creator standpoint. You want to make sure that you're doing something that's relevant, not just random person out there that happens to have a big following, because then you're just not going to get that engagement that you really want, in our opinion. So we're always making sure that our team is sitting there putting that human element on top of any sort of data-driven world in which we're doing. The other thing is that we have great relationships with all the influencers, all the creators, all the various different networks out there. And so we know how to talk to them. We know how to get the right thing. And we've even had times where we sat there and said, hey, what you put together is amazing, but that kind of doesn't really answer the brief. And so can we talk about this? Can we figure out what makes sense? And oftentimes folks are sitting there saying, yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm going to go reshoot this. And then I think the other thing also is that really understanding the difference between influencers and creators these days. Because I think that, and as I'm sure you know, in your world, a lot of brands just use that very synonymously. It's the same thing to them. And what we're really seeing is that influencers tend to be folks that they're more playing themselves. They're talking about themselves in the world. And that might be right for a fashion brand or something else that's really authentic to who they are. Creators are actually, I don't know if they're playing someone else, but they're creating content out there in the world that's relevant to their folks, but like who they are online might be slightly different than who they are in their own world, or maybe they're not talking about their everyday life. And so we're seeing that from a brand standpoint, interacting with creators actually tends to be a little bit better because the creator can sit there and tell a bit more of that brand story. And the creators are a lot more attuned to what their audiences are wanting, what's going to be relevant to their audiences. And so they're able to sit there and craft the message with us just slightly better so that it feels a bit more organic of the brand coming in, as opposed to some of the influencers that maybe you're just, hey, I'm showcasing this brand because clearly I got paid to do this.
Sure.
Again,
yeah,
consumers are savvy. Like their consumers are fine. They don't mind when a brand is coming in to do it. But when you look at a creator, if that creator is doing something that's super interesting, the consumer's like, wow, that was really fun. I enjoyed watching that 60 seconds or that 2-minute clip. Like that consumer has interacted with it. They're like, this is cool. I've enjoyed this, as opposed to like, okay, I just watched 30 seconds of this person trying that shirt on. That was a cool shirt. Maybe I go buy it. Maybe I don't. So I think that's how we're thinking about the world of influencers and creators, perhaps a little bit differently than some other agencies are.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, look, what I think is very refreshing about your answer is that you are focused on the human element. So many people think that the influencer marketing space is about, some fancy AI technology that's going to go tell you who to work with and how to work with them. And I think a lot of that type of marketing is falling flat because of some of the things that you talked about. It's really, at the end of the day, a human business, and these are relationships with people. They're not ad inventory. They're not an AdWords campaign that you can just go punch in data points and hit a button. I think shops that understand that are going to continue to do the best type of work. So very refreshing answer. So thank you for that. All right. Well, I think we're getting down to the final leg here. So what trends are on your radar for 2024 that you're excited about and you want to advise clients about so you guys can get out and integrate into those trends?
Yeah. Look, definitely AI. It's going to continue to be a thing. I think we've really just scratched the surface of what can AI do? What is that going to look like in the future? The caution I have for all of our clients and colleagues and really everyone out there is to make sure that as we embrace the AI world, which I truly believe we need to do, I think we need to embrace AI. It's here, it's going to stay. Like we shouldn't be running from it. But exactly to your point, making sure there's always that human element to whatever we're doing. So it can be fine to use AI, but let's make sure that whatever's going out there, a human is looking at. But AI is definitely a thing. We're going to see more of it for sure. I think that back to branded entertainment, like absolutely, I think that brands should be moving into a branded entertainment space. And I think that it's important for brands to really understand that branded entertainment can act like your advertising. It can act like your marketing, or it can act like real entertainment. Those can be one and the same. Barbie movie, for instance, Lego movie, for instance, that's at its core branded entertainment. So it can be one and the same, or you can sit there and say, listen, we need one or the other. And there's absolutely a spectrum. And I think it's important for brands to understand that There's ways to do this. I would also say, I think that brand partnerships are super, super interesting. When you get two brands together that are bringing the IP of one brand together with another brand to sit there and say, you know what, the thing that you have over here is going to make for a really cool collab or partnership of some kind, and bringing those two consumer audiences together. So I think there's massive opportunity there to do more and more of that. And I think that the nice thing about that is that if you find the right brands that have some consumer overlap, that's something that's new for those consumers, that they're saying, wow, this was really interesting. This was different. And it's a way for the consumer to really engage with both brands a bit more. So I think that's definitely interesting. And then the last area, I definitely think that from a social media standpoint, we're in a very interesting world right now of the changing landscape of social media, the way that different generations are engaging with social media. Obviously, with X right now, lots of different opinions about how to engage with X. Is it going to be here in 6 months? Is it going to grow? Is it going to contract? Should I, as a brand, be advertising on it or not? And so I think every brand needs to be super savvy about how they use social media and how they're engaging with their audiences on each of the different platforms, because it is very different how you should be engaging platform to platform. And so I think that that's something that brands need to realize. It's not a monolith of social media, and this is how we engage with everyone. And it's even when you talk about social media, there is some generational elements to it, and each generation isn't a monolith either. Like when you look at Gen Z, the way that you engage with perhaps younger Gen Zers is different than the way that you're engaging with older Gen Zers, which I think are like 25-year-olds at this point. So I think that those are all trends that we need to be watching for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Brendan, thanks so much for spending time with us today and letting us know about your exciting new role and how you're planning on tackling some of these challenges that you have in front of you for 2024. I'm a big fan of the work that you've been doing. I only got into the influencer marketing game as a way to continue to scratch my entertainment itch that I got from, coming up through the agency world, much like you did. And I got close. I was able to make a 20-minute documentary with Casey Neistat and Adobe. Haven't quite got to the feature length, making a movie part of it yet, but I'll be continuing to watch what you guys do and hopefully learning and aspiring to do similar types of work. So thanks again for your time today. Everybody at home, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. If you rate us on whatever podcast platform you're listening to with 5 stars, that helps us find more people. So go ahead and do that. And if you feel like you got something from my conversation with Brendan today, don't forget to share it with a colleague or a coworker who might get some value from it. So we'll see you guys again shortly. Brendan, thanks again so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Dylan. Have a great one.
All right. Cheers. Bye-bye.